This will be a little bit about the history of psychopathy in government. This latest no money for the American government thing has hopefully brought the fact that the United States of America Corporation doesn't have any money to the front of its operation. It's a British corporation, and all the tax money that Americans pay goes to the owners, the British corporation. So there's no money. And for 100 years they've been asking the privately owned Federal Reserve to print more paper money to fill in the gap. I think it's just quite humorous. When I was a little bitty historian in the early 60s, one of the things I learned was America, United States of America, was 2.5% of the world's population, and they had 50% of the wealth. And it's changed a little bit now. They're 5% of the world's population, and they have a little bit less wealth, but not too much less. After the export of all the manufacturing jobs out of America to the third world, what was left was intellectual property. That was how America was maintaining its standing. But no, the Chinese have managed to be able to get most of that through computer hacking, and that will end pretty soon. So the United States of America will be in dire straits with nothing to export. It's coming out into the alternative community that the kinds of people who enjoy government are mostly psychopaths, and that's not good for us. And that's been going on for a few thousand years and became a serious problem at the time of the invention of metal weapons and the possibility of mass production of weapons. There's a time in history where before that there are very few weapons found, and then suddenly lots of weapons. And with lots of weapons you can outfit an army like the armies in Fellowship of the Ring movies, for example, and go and beat up the farmers and take their territory and tax them. And this is done by psychopaths who just have to have control over large areas of the world. There hasn't been enough work done on psychopaths that we have a definitive answer on what it is or what causes it. The kindest thing to say about them is, I know that if the mother is under extreme stress while she's having a baby, that alters the hormonal balance for the child, and the child comes out ready for a hostile environment. And they say that psychopaths have a thinner cerebral cortex than normals, so maybe this is just a response to stress, producing kind of a warrior ant kind of human. It needs to be investigated on many levels, but it behooves us to remove the stress from pregnant women. And if you're a pregnant woman in a stressful relationship, you need to get out. I used to do counseling of distressed young women, and they're always hanging on to a bad boyfriend, and every time when they finally got rid of the guy, the next guy along was Prince Charming. And it's the holding on that prevents that person from coming into your life, in my opinion, from what I saw. There will of course be an exception to that, which you may bring forward and say, but case after case I saw after the big flood of tears and my life will never be the same and my life is over, they run into some wonderful guy who sweeps in and takes care of them. Some of the traits of psychopaths are they think they're smarter than other people. They have a high need to have the best of everything, and they see others as weak because other people can be manipulated through fear and emotions, which they're less familiar with emotions. I think they still have fear, but along the lines of greet the old boss the same as the new boss, because the new boss will just be a different psychopath. I have a little article here from a Christian paper, a Christian Post. I'm finding that the Christian papers are like an alternative news source, like Al Jazeera is an alternative news source. They have some pretty good journalism in these things, and I'd like to read this to you. This is about Timbuktu. Timbuktu used to be, I don't know what it was, winding up into, where you going, Timbuktu, a place in the middle of nowhere. It turns out it's in Mali, which is part of mine's gone blank. Anyway, it's the deposed dictator in northern Africa. It's his country. This place is a beautifully preserved Islamic castle-like city, 500 or 600 miles from the capital. Timbuktu has been transformed into a ghost town after being deserted by radical Islamists and locals who once occupied the area. Timbuktu, in northern Mali, was left without electricity and drinking water for numerous days recently, according to local reports. And it appears that has sparked a massive exodus from the town. One local official, Mokhtar Ould Keri, has reported to media there is no water, the people have left, and the Islamists too. It's a ghost town. A French-guided military campaign was recently launched in the area to oust the militant Islamic extremists controlling the area, and it appears as though that offensive has led to the interruption of electricity and water supplies to Timbuktu. It is believed that the Islamic extremists have fled the area and are regrouping in the region of Kidal, according to USA Today. Some reports have suggested that the Islamists were controlling the supply of water and electricity to the town, and when they fled due to the military offensive against them, there was no one to take control of those supply routes. It is thought that French air raids destroyed the Islamist fuel stocks, sparking them to flee. And this is the interesting part. A mansion that used to belong to former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, so that's the location, it's in Libya, had been taken over by the Islamic extremists who were using it as a kind of base. However, French offensives are said to have destroyed that mansion on the weekend. I wonder what these people, Islamic extremists, supposedly very religious, are doing in the mansion. Greet the old boss the same as the new boss. How come they're not in tents or in a hotel if there is one? They're taking over the highest quality building in the city. Timbuktu lies 560 miles from the capital of Mali and is known to have been a center for Islamic learning for centuries. Well, this, in my mind, ties in with the psychotics believe they deserve the best of everything and feel a need to be in control and don't mind using horror to get it. The third part of this is why you can't get your friends interested in these kinds of things that I talk about. And the reason is your friends have been tortured in past lives for fighting back against the psychopaths. And they have done things just in the last few thousand years, and you can see how they work. There's one story about the expansion of the Christian empire where they were going through a Muslim area and anyone who wouldn't convert was blinded, and they left one person sighted so that he could guide all of those blind people to the next town as a warning what would happen when the Christians get there. Or things like it's possible to skin a person alive. Apparently, I've heard of that. That is probably really painful. And then they throw salt on you, and the salt, if you ever had salt in a cut, it stings. Slowly eats into your flesh, and there's probably lots of screaming and flailing. And this would be done in front of the crowd to teach them what happens when they think about revolution against the psychopathic overlords. And the unspoken past life memory in the spiritual being is what prevents people from wanting to look in that direction. To get out of this, everyone has to go as a group, so everyone has to confront this new-ish information, and the powers that be, I think, are noticing the alternative media exposing their game, and that's why gun control is up. I live in Canada, and in the last 2.5 years we've had attempts at gun control, or at least gun registry, and I'm 66, and this never happened in the last 60 years. There was never talk of gun control in this country, but we now have a new world order type of prime minister, and things have become new world order-ish in Canada. Apparently, per capita, we have the same number of guns as the Americans. We just don't use them on each other in the shopping malls and drive-by shootings and things like that. But the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who are actually British soldiers, as well as the federal police, they take 2 or 3 oaths, are trying to find out where all the guns are, because I think they're being told it's a possibility that the public may become aware of this kind of information and want a really big change, which means a change in all the tax money going to the people above us rather than to make the country a better place. Now, up here in Canada, we have 3 senators who've been suspended without pay pending the completion of their investigation into misuse of expense accounts. The cynicism in me says this is probably just show business. We have a Senate where people are appointed by the prime ministers, and it's a lifetime appointment. And what it's supposed to be is a little bit of a break against wild changes in legislation that the Parliament might pass. It's supposed to be older and wiser heads taking a look at what's being proposed and make sure there aren't any hidden damages that the more youthful members hadn't considered. But the feeling is it's more like a reward for good service. You get this lifetime appointment to the Senate. And even if it is just political showbiz, this is like a salesman with a padded expense account. They've been called to task in public for this and suspended without pay. So this is a good kind of thing. They didn't do anything particularly bad, but still broke the rules, and the whole country is discussing this, and it has been the point for quite a while that the Senate might be abolished, which might be a good thing. It might not be. Maybe the whole point is to get rid of the Senate so the New World Order types can slam through a bunch of rapid changes without being held up by older and wiser heads. So occasionally we see good things happen, like Obamacare being held up, the British Parliament saying no, we are not going to go into Syria. May just be show business, may not. I'm told that things actually are going to get better to the point where you could say you won't recognize this place, meaning this planet, after not too long a time. I don't want to speculate on how long, but it's not going to be centuries. Now that we got past 2012 and CERN and other false flag disasters. The current financial crisis is something that normally happens in the life of the stock market and banks. It's bigger this time because there's a much bigger population, much more money involved, and there are more mortgages and things called derivatives that never existed before. However, this is a natural thing. There's a book was written by a very famous economist predicting this, and the statistics are identical. The stock market repeats. And this thing was predicted and is happening as predicted, and there will be a fall and there will be a recovery. So it's not the end of the world, and it's been spun into the end of the world, and there's going to be a big crash and we'll all starve to death and be taken back to the Stone Age. That's not true. You may have to learn how to be Scottish, which is being frugal, for a while, but we will carry on. If you can find a way to directly assist anyone in the third world, that would be a good thing. President Clinton was here in Vancouver speaking, and he choked up when he said that people, you, the public people, have more chance to do something good on a global scale than ever before, and it was never needed more than now. So if you can find a charity or a green effort that will actually extend out of the richer countries into the have-not nations, that would be more important than you might think. So one time in the news when I was much younger, I saw a news program, and what it was Globemasters, which is the biggest plane there is, delivering food to a country in Africa. And this is the same size of planes that would normally be bombing someplace. And I got tears in my eyes. They're just landing one after the other with literally thousands of tons of food for an area that was experiencing a famine. And we, as the human race, can do that. And the only thing that prevents that is some humanitarian humanism and a philosophy of extending a helping hand to strangers who, after all, are just you in another body.